Good morning, good people. I'm Nurul Anis from Newsflash Kuala Lumpur, serving you the updated news for an hour. Your news is our business. In Malaysia, child abuse has always been a controversial issue that has received growing attention for so many years. Despite countless attempts done by the government and private sector to raise awareness, it almost seems like this issue will never be put to an end and will continue to frequently dominate the news. This issue continues to spark controversy among mental health and legal professionals as well as in social media platforms. Sadly, child abuse and exploitation put the welfare and well-being of some children all around country in danger every day. Here are a few examples of known cases of violence towards children to demonstrate how common it is in our country.
Child abuse is defined as the harmful behavior or treatment towards children under the age of 18 years old. Child abuse does not only come in the form of physical abuse, but it also comes in the form of sexual abuse, emotional abuse, maltreatment, and negligence. Child abuse usually leads to damages to child's mental and physical health, where they might have difficulties in gaining knowledge, socializing, and they might even be paralyzed if they were physically hurt severely.
Have you ever wondered how someone could ever lay a hand and use excessive violence against a precious, naive child? Are they out of their mind? Yes, possibly. Numerous research studies have concluded that a complex interaction or combination of factors leads to an increased risk of violent behavior. And these factors include history of child abuse during their own childhood, were the victim of such abuse, genetic family hereditary factors, exposure to violence in the home or community, a lack of parenting skills to help cope with the pressures and struggles of raising a child, family stress or crisis caused by domestic violence, relationship turmoil, separation or divorce, socioeconomic stress from financial issues, unemployment or medical problems, personal mental health issues, including low self-confidence and feelings of incompetence or shame, perhaps simply physical or mental health conditions that includes depression, anxiety, or post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. With the presence of at least one of these factors, it could create a whole lot of explosive adults with the tendency of hurting others, especially the children, as they think children are incapable of fighting back. Of course, most adults want to love and care for their child in a safe home. However, stress, tiredness, or lack of parenting skills or family support make the pressures of caring a child overwhelming that often can cause rage of anger and lead to abuse.
Ladies and gentlemen, the problem of child abuse does not just stop in Malaysia, but it happens throughout the whole world globally. So first off, we need to understand how we can protect our child from child abuse. First off, one of the most important things to do is we must first educate and create an awareness in society so that our child would know what is right and what is wrong. So what does this mean by actually creating and educating your children in this way? You educate your children in showing them things that they should know that is wrong and that things that they should know that is right. So if you were to hit your child in front of them, then that would mean something is wrong, which is something you do not want to educate your child to doing so. So if your child knows that beating someone or getting beaten is wrong, your child will say no. So that goes in awareness to create for this whole society. Ladies and gentlemen, moving on to the second thing, we must learn to break our gender and our cultural norms. First off, we always perceive as men being able to hit women more. However, if we perceive this for our children, they will think that it is possible to hit, per se, their daughter. And the thing with breaking the cultural norms is that Asians are mostly known as giving tough love, or, Asian love, in a sense where if you love your child, you would beat them. We need to break this gender norm. It is not something that we need to continue on forever. Stop now and make your child understand what is right, what is wrong, and what is love and what is not. It is not in a way of beating a child in a way that you're showing love, but more to advising or, giving love in the way that it should. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, one of the most important things is you show love to your children. When you show love to your children, they will then enhance and they will nurture the love into other generations that will be coming forever. So if you're able to show great love to your children, then your children will not beat you, or your grandchildren will not have a future of getting beaten by your own son. Thank you.
Of children's rights. After the devastating world wars of the 20th century and the psychological and physical impact on the children, the United Nations decided that the human rights of children required special protection. Furthermore, after World War I, the League of Nations, which would later become the United Nations, drafted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which included the rights to life, food, shelter, education, freedom of speech and religion, justice and peace. Aware that children were especially vulnerable, the United Nations agreed to adopt the Declaration of Geneva on Children's Rights. This declaration was short with only 5 statements, but it outlined a list of responsibilities towards children who were considered vulnerable. Then, after the Second World War, the United Nations General Assembly accepted the Declaration of the Rights of the Child. This declaration paved the way for the adoption of the Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1989, which became the first legally binding international text to protect children's rights. That's all from me. Thank you.
Talking about protecting the children's rights, the United Nations has created a special convention to protect the rights of children all over the world. This convention is called the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. And this international treaty consists of 45 articles that set out children's rights and how governments should work together to make them available to all children. As in Malaysia, the Federal Constitution lays out basic human rights standards, including the human rights of children, which fulfill the requirements of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, or we call it as CHC. This can be seen in the Part 2 of the Federal Constitution, which consists of the fundamental liberties of all citizens in Malaysia. In combating child abuse in Malaysia, our government has enacted the Child Act 2001 Act 611 in implementing its obligation under the Convention on the Rights of the Child CRC. This act embodies the non-discrimination core principles, the best interests of the child, their right to live, to life, and respect for their views and perspective. In addition, our government had enacted new act to encounter child abuse in Malaysia. The new act are the Sexual Offences Against Children Act 2017, which is enacted to encounter sexual offences that is not covered under the Child Act 2001.
The laws and legislation outside Malaysia. The first one is Canada. Laws and legislation against child abuse are enacted on the provincial and federal territories level. Investigations into child abuse are handled by the provincial and territorial authorities through government social service departments, and enforcement is through local police and courts. In Germany, the abuse and the attempted abuse of vulnerable persons, including children, is punishable according to the German Criminal Code Section 225 with a from 6 months to 10 years. However, crimes against children must be prosecuted within 10 years of the victims reaching 18 years of age. As of 2020, Germany and the Netherlands are 2 out of all 27 European Union countries that do not have any reporting obligations for civilians or professionals. There is no mandatory reporting law, which would grant reporters of child abuse anonymity and immunity. United States. In the 1960s, mandatory reporting in the United States was introduced. In 1974, the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act was introduced, and as of April 2019, 18 states had legislation requiring that mandated reporters report based on suspicion of child abuse or neglect.
Being a parent can be a joyful, meaningful, and sometimes overwhelming experience. There may be times your children push you to the limit. That time, you may feel driven to behaviors you wouldn't normally think you were capable of. Most parents want to love and care for their child in a safe home. Stress, tiredness, or lack of parenting skills make the pressures of caring for a child overwhelming and can cause child abuse.
Child abuse can happen when the parents have lack of support from the family members, friends, or even partners to help them with demands of parenting.
NETS, intellectual disability, or mental illness. Parents may be unable to adequately care for their child and give the love that they need.
With all above situation, now we know why a child can be abused. But it is important to remember that abuse is the abuser's fault. While the abuser may have problems that contribute to their behavior, they still have a choice in how they behave and whether to seek help to address their problem. Even if someone does things that annoy or anger someone else, that is not an excuse for abuse. The abuser is responsible for how they handle their feelings. Feeling angry or irritated is not an acceptable reason to act out or harm someone else.